Welcome to the second lecture of the course Engaging with the Startups to Drive Corporate Innovation. In this lecture, we will talk about the main requirements for both corporations and startups to effectively collaborate with each other. Large corporations and startup ventures are decidedly different organizations. Each side has what the other one lacks. The corporation has resources, a scale, power, and the routines needed to run a proven business model efficiently. The startup, on the other hand, has none of those, but typically has promising ideas, organizational agility, the willingness to take risks, and aspirations of rapid growth. Shouldn't great things happen if both sides combine their strengths? The complementary benefits in collaboration between incumbents and startups are pretty obvious. Corporations are typically slow, lack creativity, are too process-driven, and too focused on exploiting the existing business. On the other hand, startups usually have difficulty accessing new markets, gaining visibility, establishing their legitimacy, and have difficulty scaling. Both parties have distinct abilities in terms of assisting the other with shortcomings. So it's a great opportunity for both corporations and startups when they bring their resources together. But what are the ways of engaging? As I said in the first lecture, corporations try to reach out the startup ecosystems through two models. So we have a more established classical categorization of models, and they are corporate venture capital and corporate incubators. And we have new models that complement the more established models. And they are outside-in startups and inside-out platforms. We will explain each of these models in great details in future lectures. So we know startup incubators are growing fast, and we know that just in the US, we have more than 1,400 incubators active. And incubators are traditionally set up by government, so they are state-owned entities that bring growing and high potential startups within one location, because location is very important for growth. And they provide location and some main resources for these startups in order to start their business and grow the opportunity that they have focused in. So as I said, incubators are growing and traditionally owned by the government. But corporations have started to focus on incubators and try to develop their own incubators within their own space, let's say. So the ecosystem is now ready to support a growing number of startups in bringing their own innovation to the market. As you can see, there are quite some incubators and accelerators and co-working spaces as well in the US. But what are the requirements for engagement? From corporations' side, the requirements are pretty clear. So instead of viewing startups as simply agents of disruption, companies are trying to collaborate with the startups to transform them into engines of corporate innovation. Managers need to be careful when approaching startups. Startups are in fear of large corporations stealing their ideas and profiting against them. Therefore, prior to engaging with startups, corporations need to clarify whether they have the ability to screen and monitor a large number of startups. They need to be clear about what their distinctive value proposition as a large firm is to a startup, beyond what independent venture capitalists, incubators, and accelerators can offer, and need to be very clear about their objectives in working with their startups. as we also mentioned the last bullet point here. So it's important to be clear about their own goals and what kind of unique value proposition toward the startups they have compared to traditional venture capitalists and incubators and accelerators, what kind of resources corporations can offer, and they must be able to effectively screen, identify, work with, and monitor several startups in order to make sure that the efforts of startups are aligned with the efforts of corporations. For startups, however, the requirements are quite different. Startups need to make sure that the corporation has a similar vision of innovation and collaboration like the startup. So there should be a match in terms of a shared vision on innovation and collaboration. Otherwise, it would be quite difficult. So this is one of the requirements that should be checked early on the road. Startups should also find harmony and sympathy with the corporate culture. So corporate culture is something that can change very slowly. So if the corporate culture does not appreciate exploration and experimentation, so it would be difficult for startups to really gain their freedom and work on their ideas that they like. So it's important for startups to really check the corporate culture. In addition, it's important for startups to think really in depth what kind of resources they need from corporations. So early on for startups, it should be clear what type of resources they need that corporations have and could help them. Is it about the customer base? Is it about the intellectual property? Is it about the human capital? So what are the main assets, main resources that the startups specifically need and corporations could help them? The last requirement is that startups really need to think in advance whether they can accept the corporation as an important audience or resource provider. So the corporation will become an important stakeholder that the startups need to collaborate and sometimes need to report to. So they really need to think whether they like this way of working. Corporations sometimes need formal procedures for reporting. They have some centralized decision making sometimes. So it could be a bit daunting for startups, especially in very early stages, to work with corporations. So these are important aspects for startups to collaborate with corporations. So this was it for the second lecture. In the third lecture, we will talk about the overview of collaboration models, and we will gradually delve further into each model. I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and yeah, see you soon.